to the second Unity P2P. Make sure you do, when you're making a new project, choose 3D. Just know that you can get better lighting in URP and HDRP, but to keep it simple, we're just gonna cover the standard renderer. To import your package, you can go ahead and click on Assets right here, then Import Package, then Custom Package. Yeah, so once you see this pop up, that means you're all good. The package went through, and now you just hit Import. If you look down here in the assets, you'll see there's a starting scene. So go ahead and click on that, and you should see this little room. We're gonna start off by looking at the different lights that are available in Unity, which are located in Game Object, Light, and then there are all these. Look at all these sitting there. Anyway, first up we got directional light, which is actually always think of directional light as the sun, because this light will like cover everything. Nothing can escape the directional light. So we already have a directional light here in our hierarchy. Oh, and if you can't see like the little symbol, you can click on here on the gizmos, and you can toggle like the little icons on and off. That'll be pretty useful, like throughout this workshop. But yeah, if you go ahead and rotate this directional light, you'll see that it changes the time of day. Where like if you put it upside down, it's basically nighttime, and it gets like all orangey during like when the sun's. Actually, you can even see the sun moving along with it. And yes, you can add another directional light, but it's too bright. But I don't know. Maybe you have an artistic vision where you want to use 2 directional lights. The second kind of light is point light, which, as the name implies, is just a light that comes from a point. And as you can see, it does go through objects. So it's like it's not the most like accurate, but if you bake, it does get really accurate. But we're gonna get to baking in a bit. And a lot of lighting is essentially just baking, to make it look pretty, because real-time lights are too expensive. So the difference between real-time and bake, though, is real-time is like any light, any shadows that like any light that's gonna give a shadow that has an object that's gonna move. Let me just show you. It's probably easier. So this, in the inspector, the directional light, you can see it's a real-time light. Why? Because if you move an object, the shadow moves along with it. But if it's baked, then when you move the pillar after you bake, the shadow will move with it. But you know what? Let's get into baking. And what better way to start baking with the area light? Because the area light will not work at all unless you bake it. So here you can see, like, you're like, where's the light? It's not baked yet. Let's bake it. But you know what? I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger though first. And I'm gonna add an object here under it, just so you can see like the types of like shadows it gives off. Make it smaller. All right. So you probably won't have this lighting tab yet, but to go to the lighting tab, you go to Window, Rendering, and then Lighting, and it'll be this little tab popped off. But you can like bring it in here, which is what I like to do. So this is the main panel for baking lights. This is basically, think of like in an oven, like the little knobs. These are the knobs pretty much. To get started though, click here and make a new lighting settings asset. And then bam, you can edit everything now. Most important, if you have a computer that has a decent enough graphics card, you can choose to use your GPU instead of your CPU to bake the lights, which do make it faster if you do have one, or if you don't, then you can just stick to CPU. I highly recommend to lower these numbers, because they're too high. It's gonna take forever for things to bake. I'd say like put lower numbers. You can copy like the ones I have. Light map size, you probably do want to make that smaller. And then important, ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion is it'll make the edges darker. Any two surfaces that are close to each other, it'll make them dark. Kind of like in real life. I personally like to increase the indirect intensity, which is like the glow of lights. I think it looks pretty good with. I'm gonna put 1.5 or something. I already did this for you, but any surface that you want to be static, to be like baked, you have to set it to static, which is right here. So let's finally hit bake, and to do that, you just hit generate lighting down here. If you can see it, and it starts the baking process, which will take a little bit. Yes. So each light, each light, you'll see that like if you go to the inspector, once it's selected, you can change the intensity, which is like the brightness. But since I already baked the lights, essentially whatever lighting settings there were, they're like painted on top of like all the surface. So these shadows are just like painted on now, and you'll actually see like if you bake something like this and then you move objects, the shadows are still there. This is painted on. Actually, if you move this one too, like the shadows will move with it. Let me clear the data, the bake data. There you go. So now it's how it looks how it used to. But you can change the intensity of the lights. So it only changes like the brightness of like the actual lights. The skybox is different. It won't change that. And here you can actually change like how much like glow there is as well. But yeah, you can do that for any light. And then also you can change the color. I don't know if you saw that. This will also affect like the look of it once you bake it. And if you want to bake any other lights, for example, let me add a point light and a spotlight. And I'm gonna right now it's real time, so it won't show up if you bake. But if you want it to be baked, you can either choose mixed, which is a mix of like real time and baked, where like it'll change the shadows on moving objects, but it'll still like give off a glow and stuff like that. I think it's pretty useful for the sun to be mixed, because the sun does like influence how things look, but it also like your shadows also move under the sun, you know? You can like mess around and add as many lights as you want. For the spotlight, you can also change like the size of it and like the range of it, like how far it goes. And of course the color and the intensity. We'll make a green light, make it mixed. Actually make it big. Make it really intense. See what happens. So that's pretty much it for this scene. This scene we were just covering like different kinds of lights and introducing you to this lighting tab. But yeah, let's move on to the next scene. So if you open up the lighting probe scene, you'll see this little sphere on top of an RGB floor. However, in this scene, I have not set the objects to static. So to get you kind of to like the habit of setting things to static when you want them to get baked, click on all these on the floor and the wall, and set that to static. So then we can bake it. And just make sure the sphere is not static, because let's pretend this is our player. So for every scene you do have to make a new like lighting settings. So go ahead and open the lighting tab again and hit new. And once again, we're greeted with this panel. And you know what? On this one, since we only have 1, 2, 3, 4 cubes, I don't think it should take too long to render. I mean to bake. So I'll go ahead and just hit bake. Also make sure whatever light sources you want to affect the bake light maps, to make sure that they are set to either mixed or baked, because if they're just real time, they won't affect anything once you bake it. There you go, it's pretty fast. Objects that are not static obviously like can't get like pretty lighting painted on them, because like they move around, so you don't want the same lighting on it at all times. But there's a way to set areas where it'll affect any object that's not static, and those are called, where is it? In game object, light, and light probe groups. So go ahead and click on that. You'll see this kind of like box over here. Bring it over here to your little sphere friend. I'm gonna set it here in the middle. And these are essentially just areas where any object that's in it that's not static, it'll pre-compute like what the lighting should look like in this area and then apply it to whatever object is in it. So you'll see right now, if you click on edit probe positions, you can change the positions of these little light probe spheres. And you can just go ahead and like click on it. The cool thing about once you're in this like editing light probe mode, you can't accidentally click on anything else. So you're only affecting like the little spheres. You can just select them all, and with control you can copy and paste with control C and then control V, but what I like to do is control D, which is duplicate. And like I said, make sure to leave like this like little gap between the two areas. Because if they're too close, like it can mess up. And then do the same for the blue area, like this. And then to make it easier to copy like the side for the shadowy area, you can just grab this whole side and like duplicate it, and then set one right here, and then duplicate it again and set another area right here. And it should look something like this. So once you're done with this, you have to click exit light probe editing, because then you won't be able to click anything else. And there you go. Now let me see if it actually did work. No, it did not. Maybe you have to bake again. There you go. So if you bake again, you'll see. Do you see the little glow like on the sphere now? So when you move it to green, red, and blue, it changes a little glow. Yeah. So that's the solution for any object that's like not baked. This is what they do to make the objects that are not baked look like they're still like in the same world. Like they're not like just disconnected in terms of like the lighting and like the colors. This has been light probes. And last but not least, the kitchen, where we're gonna kind of like mix everything that we've learned so far, and light a kitchen. So here's a kitchen. We have a little folder here called Skybox, which has cube maps for 2 skyboxes. So you can go ahead and throw whichever one you like. If you like daytime or sunset, and whatever skybox you have, it'll change the sky. I'll leave daytime, or nah. Actually, it's too bright. So yeah, I'll just do sunset. But there is a setting to change like how much the skybox affects everything, and it should be in this like environment section under the lighting tab. So environment lighting here, the source is a skybox, so that's like obviously what's making this too bright. If you change the intensity, that's like how much the skybox affects everything here. I believe in this scene, yeah, everything's also set to static now, so you shouldn't have to worry about that. Since we're gonna be iterating a lot of like different bakes essentially, I highly recommend setting everything to like really low numbers, because it'll take forever. The kind of like strategy to do this is like you'll set numbers really low to like see how it's gonna look essentially. It'll be low quality, but like at least you'll get an idea of like what the colors are gonna look like. Once you settle on something that like you like, then that's when you set the numbers like higher, and it'll take longer, but like it'll be your final bake. So let's see, make this 512, low quality. Make sure you have ambient occlusion, because it makes things look better. That's too much indirect intensity, so I'm gonna tone it down a little bit. And now just generate lighting. Yeah, actually we can see like what exactly is being baked onto every surface. So this is like all the data for the bake. Yeah, this is what it stores. Basically just like color and brightness. If you go into game object, it's a final object here that we haven't covered like in the lighting tab. which is reflection probes. So you have this over here. Let me bring it over here to us. Think of this as a 360 camera. So here's a 360 camera, and it'll take a picture of like its surroundings, and anything that's reflective or shiny, it'll use that 360 image as like a, that's what it's gonna like show. To not have to ray trace pretty much. And you see this like yellow box. That's like whatever object is in that yellow box is what it'll be using that reflection. So you can see the ceiling is like getting darker once like the yellow box touches it. And actually, I kind of want to use. You can change the box size, make it a little bit bigger, wider, move it a little bit. I actually don't want this like hallway area to use the reflection yet, but I do want the photo to be taken here. And once you have like the reflection probe wherever you want it to take the picture, you go ahead and you can change the resolution too. Leave it at 256, and you just hit bake, and everything that's static should show up in that picture, so you can see the image actually, kind of like a marble. And now the reflections are a little bit more accurate now. Like you'll actually see the kitchen instead of just the sky like in these reflections. So now both the lighting and the reflection probes are baked. And actually, fun fact, if you bake anything else after this, after having a reflection probe, it'll also update the reflection probe. That can cause some problems if like you don't want it to rebake, but that's a problem for another day. But all right, we got reflections now. So it's really good for like shiny plastic or glass. Those are the two big. You can also make mirrors, but obviously it's not gonna look too accurate, but it's a cheap solution. So here's what I made. I really just added lights. That's all I did. Like the LED strips, yeah. Also here, and that's pretty much it.